If it isn't obvious enough, I really enjoy talking about power systems and the abilities that result from them, and you guys seem to like it too. So today, we're back at it talking about my now favorite power system in anime, Negator abilities from Undead Unluck and everything surrounding them. Before we start, it'd be great if you like the video for the algorithm and subscribe for future content here on the channel. With that said, let's jump right in. Alongside negator abilities themselves, there are two other distinct sections of this power system that we must talk about, UMAs and the Soul. The world of Undead Unluck operates on a rule system. These rules are brought into the world by the existence of the UMAs, or the unidentified mysterious animals. For the sake of simplicity, I'll just be calling them the Yumas from now on. Like with everything in existence, there's a beginning, a source, if you will, and the source of everything in this power system is God. Well, gods, Sun and Luna, to be specific. Sun is the one who bestows negator abilities to humans and creates Yumas with the sole purpose of making humans suffer. Yumas can be split into two distinct categories, phenomenon types and concept types. Unfortunately, there's no real confirmation on what traits or abilities actually separate the types, besides the notion that concept types are God's favorite, so all I can provide you with is my theory based on what I observed while researching for this video, so take everything I'm about to say with a grain of salt. Phenomenon types such as spoil and burn, for example, can only use their power in a literal sense. Spoil can make people and objects rot, and burn can only burn things. While concept types like autumn and spring can use powers based on concepts that surround their rule. For example, spring can use cherry blossom petals to turn people into sakura trees since they bloom in the spring. Regardless of the type, every Yuma has a few traits that they all share. They all have an effective range in which their powers work. For spoil, any person in his area of effect will gain a countdown timer on their stomach, and when the time runs out, they will begin rotting. In a case like autumn, the effective area will gain the traits of the season of autumn. Yumas also have phases. Their starting form is their core. This is the true form of a Yuma and is usually just a head that possesses basic versions of their powers. Destroying the core is also the only way to actually kill a Yuma. Phase 1 provides a Yuma with an actual body, but no advanced application of their abilities. Phase 2 is usually the final phase for a Yuma. This phase changes their physical form, making it more refined, and gives them an advanced application of their ability. Since I've already used Spoil's basic ability as an example, I'll just use his Phase 2 ability. In Phase 2, Spoil gains a Spoil Beam that instantly rots anything it touches, instead of the rotting being based on a timer or his Spoil Aura. At the time of recording this video, there have only been 3 Yumas to achieve a Phase 3, Spring, Beast, and Language. When entering Phase 3, a Yuma will gain a change in physical appearance and a further expansion of their powers. All Yumas also have the ability to create mini versions of themselves, called Juniors. Consuming these juniors in one way or another is how they go from Phase 1 to Phase 2. At the top of the Yuma hierarchy are the Master Rules. The Master Rules are a group of 101 rules chosen by God to have absolute power. Normally, when a Yuma is killed, the rule they embody disappears from the world, but the Master Rules are immune to this. For example, even though language has now been neutralized, languages still exist in the world. At the top of the Master Rule hierarchy are the 10 Superior Rules, a group of Yumas with humanoid appearances that are by far the strongest in the series. They dwell within a room inside of the sun and are similar to the Union's Round Table. Negator abilities are what allow our characters to negate a single rule that exists in the world and are the driving force of the power system. It should be noted that not every Yuma has a negator counterpart and vice versa. Negator abilities can be split into two separate categories, external targeting types and self-targeting types. External targeting type abilities only affect external objects or people and not the user themselves, and self-targeting types only affect the user and no one else. These two categories also have subcategories that determine their method of activation. Voluntary and compulsory activation types determine whether the ability is under the control of the user or not. To make this easier to understand, I'll briefly go over a set of negation abilities that fit each possible combination of the categories and subcategories. Undead is a self-targeting compulsory activation type ability that negates the rule of death for the user. This is effectively immortality with infinite regeneration. Unluck is an external targeting compulsory activation type ability that negates the rule of luck. It gives anyone who makes skin-to-skin contact with the user misfortune, often called a stroke of unluck, no matter what. Unchange is an external targeting voluntary activation type ability that negates the rule of change. This ability allows the user to negate any change in an inanimate object, such as the air, turning it into a near indestructible barrier. And finally, Unfair is a self-targeting voluntary activation type ability that negates the fairness of having a single negation ability, allowing the user to copy other negation abilities. The way a negation ability functions depends on how the user perceives it. As I mentioned before, Undead is an ability that negates death with regeneration, but Andy, the user, perceives death as something that would be a result of things like bleeding or aging, so it wouldn't heal something that doesn't bleed, such as dislocation. Changes in perception can help evolve a negation ability as well. The best example of this is Fuko's Unluck. At the beginning of the series, Unluck is an ability that gives anyone who comes in direct contact with her a stroke of unluck of varying degree depending on how much affection she feels for the target and how long she is touching them. After altering her perception of love and her abilities themselves, she becomes able to transfer unluck into objects she has affection for, mainly bullets that transfer the stroke of unluck to whatever they hit. It's also able to give her targets personalized unluck based on how much she understands them. Negation abilities are tied to one's soul. Within the soul lies the past users of a given ability. It's the past generation that chooses the next successor of a negation ability. When meeting the past holders of an ability, that negator can greatly increase their power since the soul holds their past experience. Learning to use the soul in general is extremely beneficial for a negator. For example, Unforgettable, a negation ability that caused its user Nico Vorgil to remember every minute detail of everything he ever experienced, had a side effect of crushing his mind due to the vast amount of information in his brain. When the soul is applied to Unforgettable, the amount of information it can hold is now practically infinite. He can even share his memories with others through a soul cable. With this revelation, Nico discovered that negation abilities are most likely being held back by physical bodies. The soul has the potential to break down the barriers that create the external and self-targeting categories entirely. In fact, there's already a case for this. Unseen, the ability of Sean Dots, was previously a self-targeting compulsory activation type ability that rendered himself and everything he considered to be his property invisible when he closed his eyes. However, Sean broke down the barrier that categorized his ability, making it one that can not only completely erase his own presence, but the presence of anyone else he's touching. Even their weight will be undetectable. Personally, I can't wait to see how this concept evolves in the series and what it would do for other negation abilities. Soul-based abilities can also be used to interact with things that shouldn't be able to be touched, like the Yuma Ghost, through applying it to things such as one's fist or even weapons like a katana. The last thing I want to talk about in regards to the power system are the artifacts. While not necessarily a part of the power system itself, I feel like they're adjacent to it, so we're talking about them briefly. Artifacts are made by God, specifically Luna, and are items that come in all shapes and sizes, and have a myriad of different abilities depending on the artifact. For example, there's a pen artifact called G-Liner that has the ability to bring anything the wielder draws into reality, while also having the side effect of flooding the mind of the first person who touches it with the entire past and future of the world. Depending on the combination, an artifact can help enhance the potency of a negator ability. For example, Rip, the user of Unrepair, an ability that makes any wound inflicted by the user unable to heal by any means, uses the artifact Blade Runner to increase the size and severity of the wounds he can inflict. Well, at the cost of having to replace both his legs with the artifact, but the point still stands. An artifact's power depends on the strength of the user's heart and can even be evolved in the case of Blade Runner. But there's only been the one example of an artifact evolving, so there's no concrete traits on what an artifact gains when it's evolved. I've actually been wanting to make this video for the last couple months or so, but I've been scared since Undead Unluck is the first ongoing series I've ever covered on the channel. The first time I wrote this video, the chapter that said souls can break down the categories dropped and I was absolutely devastated. So now that there haven't been any life-shattering additions to the power system, I decided now was the right time to visit this idea again. This video could be outdated before it even comes out, but if it is, I'll just make another video. It's not like I mind since I love talking about Undead Unluck. Anyways, like, subscribe, you know the deal. That's it for this one.
Lately I'm feeling so cool. Yeah. Come and get a taste of the hip soul food. Spice up the animal with neo haiku. While soul goes to school, way slash kung fu.